Hello, this is Paul Johnson for Film Obsessive, and I'm here today with Christian Loubek and Erika Hamilton. They are co-producers of the short film Belief. Christian is the film's writer and director, and Erika is the lead actor, and I understand also something of the inspiration for this story. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having us.
It's so great to have you both. Christian, could I have you begin by telling our audience a little bit just about the film, what it is and does?
Yeah, the film is was inspired by Erika Hamilton, who is not only a tremendous actress but also my wife, and it was written for her when she was first pregnant with our first child. It was born of some unfortunate circumstance, but we shared this script, and from that story, we shared this script. Had a little bit of a cry, put it up on a shelf, and it sat for 9 years until the children were of age to play the central role alongside her.
Wow. So it was your intent all along to make this a family affair. There is then there or there was never any intent to cast this with anyone other than with Erica or have it performed by anyone other than your own children?
This script couldn't have been written without Erika and her family, for sure. However, the script was written prior to the children's arrival. So they were just a star in the sky when it was written. And the story is a tribute to the transcendent power of mothers in our lives. So it's a heartfelt journey. And we found an interesting way in the door. But as it sat on the shelf for 9 years, in an interesting way, life began to imitate art in certain themes that we had written. So the most delicious part was introducing our children into the narrative that was written before they had even
You know,
found
I'm
us.
I'm going to come back to your children in just a second and ask Erica first, like, what was your reaction? So did Christian pitch this to you essentially at a moment of trauma or a crisis, or how did
So
that conversation go?
what happened is that I was newly pregnant and very excited, and my career had just started like getting some momentum, and I called my manager to let them know, and they fired me. And that really upset us in a time where we were supremely happy. And Christian was like, "Well, I'm just going to write you an amazing role. I'm going to write you an amazing role that will highlight how powerful mothers are." And he showed me the script, and I legit cried right on the spot. It was so beautiful. And it highlighted parts that he always says you have your strength and vulnerability, all these things. And it just was like, I can't wait to do this. But then life happens, you have kids and it's crazy. And yeah, it did just sit on the shelf. And then when the time came around, well, last year, we had some opportunity to shoot it. And uh, I had a moment because I had auditioned with both the kids during the pandemic, and my son is sometimes all over the place. And I was like, Christian, I don't think we can cast him. And he all along was no, absolutely not. This is the way it's going to be. And Bear, who you see in the film, is just so magnetic, and he was so on point a day before or a couple days before we really worked on the material, and he knew the intentions behind the few words he says, and he just got it. And my daughter is delivers that last poetic moment, and yeah, it really really works. So I'm glad I let him direct. He knows what he's doing.
It does work, and
I'll jump on that real quick because I think that in that what was seated in that moment was not only a desire to showcase Eric's talent, but also to really center it on the often overlooked role of mothers in our lives. And so that was where the real inspiration came from, was rooted in something that gets so little airtime, but is so critical to each one of us.
Let's have one of you give a short little thumbnail sketch of what the script is and does, like who the protagonist is, what happens with the protagonist. I know with a short film, you can't give away too much plot without giving away the whole thing, but how would you characterize it for our audience members who haven't had the opportunity to see it yet?
Yeah, it's a good question as to who the protagonist is, because I think there's a bit of a handoff in this, and I don't necessarily want to give away the ending because
Yeah.
it's a movie that you'll want to see to the end. But the movie is bookended, starts and stops with a successful young man, Lennox, and his family, his wife and child, as they are moving into what is their version of their dream home. It's a successful moment, a proud moment, a moment of peak potential. And in those moving boxes, there's one that's, beautifully worn. It says mom right across the top. And he opens it up and he finds a crystal doorknob and a letter that he recognizes, but doesn't really remember in the way that the story unfolds. So once he opens that letter, it's a bit of a Pandora's box into his past that journeys him to remember all of the moments that made him who he is today.
That's really lovingly told, and I'm impressed with a lot of what happens in the script. But I'll just mention that the doorknob is something that seems completely innocuous, but you imbue it with all kinds of thematic meaning and resonance. And we think of doors in films very often as they are portals, right? They are places that characters go through to different dimensions or lives, and that's something that your film explores and I think is rich in its possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to say, I think we did something interesting with the structure of this film. Something that, I wouldn't say it's experimental, but I would say it's unconventional. In sort of distilling down all of those rich elements of that a parent or a mother might give us in our lives. It was really, it was never really the big ceremonial moments. It was never the big dramatic beat that you expect in the movie where a parent sits down and writes that, speaks that beautiful speech. What I remember more is the small little observations and the virtues of things like steadiness and consistency. And those don't necessarily have the Hollywood dramatic beats that we might attribute to them. So what we did is we sort of shotgunned out, when this movie really gets going, we sort of shotgunned out all of these unceremonious moments, put it out there. And then as the movie goes on, you're sort of left in a little bit of a mystery here. And as the movie goes on, the viewer, if done right, the viewer sort of puts together all the pieces and sort of comes together as you get closer and closer to the end to realize what it is that made this man who he is today.
It's really lovely in that regard. And I admit too that it was a little bit of a surprise that I did not see coming. I sensed that something was coming, but I did not know exactly what. And what does come at the end, I think yields not only something of a revelation for Lennox's character, but something of one for us as well.
Yeah, it's not only a plot point, it's a perspective shift. And that's where a little bit, I think, where you are able to revisit a lot of the moments that happened earlier in a satisfying way.
So can I ask, Erika, what's the shoot like? You're there as actor, but your husband is the director, and your children are around here. Is this a film that took long to shoot, or did it proceed quickly?
It went in Hollywood land fast and slow. We shot over the course of 4 days, and I met working with him, so I was completely confident and comfortable with Christian. But I had some worries about the kids. We shot in locations. We shot in our house. We turned our house upside down. There was how many different locations that we got from that?
So the beautiful part is 9 years later when we pulled this script off and we remembered the heartfelt nature of the story, we also reopened it and recognized with fresh eyes that we had 15 cast members in 10 locations.
We're like, oh.
Which is not exactly how you want to design a 10-page script. But as much as there's a beauty to the story itself, there was a beauty in the process, and our community really came out in full force. Of those 15 cast members, 13 are friends of ours, part of our community off the playground.
Yeah, we just
all of the locations were either our home or other friends and family that contributed. So in some ways, I felt like we had a very casual production in the sense that it was a very small crew, just 4 people, and we took our time doing it. No one was breaking their neck to get there at dawn.
Yeah, but we had to take on role. Like I was the hair and makeup and the clothing and making sure everything was still, continuity was right. And there were a lot of little frazzle moments, but mostly it was a great shoot. Bear, my son, had to learn about the sort of hurry up and wait aspect of things. Hurry, get ready. Okay, and then sit and wait for all the things to get lined up and shots to get centered. We had a fantastic DP named Derek Bauer, and yeah, him and Christian, that was their first time working together. They worked brilliantly together and just created magic. Every day we had a little bit of fun, for sure.
Do either or both of your children have aspirations for this particular profession now?
Actually, it's funny because I think they enjoyed it. They said they enjoyed it, and Bear specifically was like, "Yeah, this is cool. I don't think I need to do it again though." But with that said, I mean, we do a camp every summer where we're asked to be a part of these teenager scripts, and Bear and Charlie have both acted a lot, and they can just step into the role so well.
Oh,
I imagine still more to see from them.
We're still in that stage where it's play.
Yeah.
And I'll give another anecdote on that one. It is Erika, up till the day of, was we knew Charlie would be solid. We knew Erika was a seasoned actor, as were the actors in the bookends of it. But up until the day of, Erika kept handing me head sheets of other young children to play her son.
I feel bad about that now.
And we were determined to do this together as a family and as a process. And I will say, as a director, even though we were very casual about it, small crew, there was a moment day of when I realized the optics of my professional peers coming over to our house to film the director's family. And I got a little bit uncomfortable. But we started on those scenes of young Lennox at the desk. And I would say it was in 2 or 3 takes that Bear was rehearsed, ready, and just laid it down. And everyone sort of set the bar for everyone's performance going forward.
Yeah.
And so, Christian, this is technically your first film. I mean, you have a wealth of experience in the industry, and so you're not a novice in that regard. But I am curious, in having written this script and having brought this film to its fruition, does it instill in you some ambition to do more or different work in this realm?
Absolutely. To be fair, I've developed several feature films over the years, and I've had various stages of development happen. We've been greenlit on a couple films. We have A-list actors involved, but it has never quite connected in the way that I had imagined. But there's a beautiful poetry to that, and the fact that what really unlocked this first film was my wife. And I think that was a really special moment for us, given the backstory to all that went on with this film.
And Belief is just beginning its festival run, is that right? You've been to a couple of places, one quite recently. Can I have you talk a little bit about your experience on the festival circuit, and then maybe where else we can see the film?
Well, we had our world premiere at LA Shorts, which is an Oscar BAFTA qualifying festival. And then just last week, we screened at Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival, which is also an Oscar qualifying. And we were one of 5 nominated as the best in short. And so we had wonderful screenings at both, sold out crowd in LA, and just an amazing crowd in Martha's. And yeah, we're waiting for what's next.
I'd love to say one more thing about screening that. In LA, it was great. Well, both theaters were very large, and we screened to full houses. And I think in LA it was about 200 plus in the LA Live Regal Cinemas, and that was a very industry-facing audience. So we had our cast, we had our crew, we had our friends and family there, and it was a very industry-facing audience that we were, you're never quite sure how it will be received. So we were very excited that we were given a lot of love, and the kids came up on stage to participate in the Q&A. And then last week was a very different audience in Martha's Vineyard, a very prestigious, largely African American, full house, maybe 250 plus, which was also an extremely enriching experience.
That is so exciting for the two of you. So I assume that Erika, you are continuing to act, and that Christian, you're looking for more opportunities to direct, and the two of you are continuing to parent. Anything specific and new on your horizons, or is it just continuing with the festival circuit for Belief at this moment?
Well, I'm also a writer, and we are collaborating in some future. We're a team now. This has unlocked us to be making more things together. And so definitely acting, writing. Sky's the limit.
Erika has a wonderful series in the mix called Out of Tune, that is based on a short film that she had written prior. A beautiful story. I have a couple of independent feature films that we're very excited about. Again, if you asked me about my filmmaking, I would say Belief is a departure from my normal, because Belief comes earnestly straight from the heart, and that was a very vulnerable place to me. I usually like to walk in the door with a little bit more humor before we have such resonant topics. But I will also say that what really was unlocked in me is a desire to do more short films, to play around, to be more experimental. Like I said, I think you mentioned that I have been a director for the last 20 years in the commercial space, but I kind of look forward to sort of being the Benjamin Buttons of directors, and working backwards in terms of my budgets into a more freeing space. We've been just absolutely it's been such a joy to not only make this film and be surrounded by people who make films straight from the heart, but also then to be in a community of people that screen together, support each other, and help each other through it. So I found it a really rewarding experience.
That's a lovely message, Christian, and so is the message of your film Belief. And congratulations to both you and Erika for getting it completed, and getting it completed in the way you wanted to get it completed, with the assistance and substance of your own family, and getting it out into the world. And I'm really optimistic for other viewers to be able to see it in the near future. So thank you both for taking the time to talk with Film Obsessive today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it, Paul. Thank you.